Well, it's good to be here with the first episode of the No Neutral Moments podcast YouTube channel, and excited about this journey and excited about the very first live video guest. I know this guest really well. I think I've known her since I was seventh grade. Is that about right?
Yep. Seventh grade.
Seventh grade.
Well, I was in sixth.
Yeah, you were a young girl in the sixth grade, and we met, and now we've been married 34 years this August. And so, but we're not here to talk about our marriage. We're gonna have a conversation about something that my wife has been doing for, I don't know, a couple of years now. I'll let her tell you about it. And it's something called Every Neighbor. And so I'll just jump right into it and just say, Cindy, welcome. It's kind of weird to have this interview with you, but it's great.
Thanks for having me.
Well, you're welcome. Nobody else would take the invitation. But just tell a little bit about the background of Every Neighbor. And you may want to start with a summary of what it is, or you may just want to just kick off with how the journey started in your heart and your mind. And I'll probably jump in and interrupt you and have you clarify something. So anyways, go from there.
So really, I think the basic premise of who we are at Every Neighbor is just about connection. So it's about community connection, building relationships, and that's really the heart of it. Mm-hmm. When we came up with the idea of the name Every Neighbor, a lot of people ask us that now, like, why'd you come up with that name? And really, we came up with that during some dreaming periods in 2020, honestly, just to think about this aspect that every neighbor has value. And every neighbor brings value to our community, but every one of us get a responsibility. We get to take on a responsibility to serve and to make our community better. And so really just that kind of from an individual perspective of just the value of people and their stories and the relationships and the skills that they bring to our community, we really wanted to highlight that. And so that's really that connection piece of just how values of relationship and connection are really important to us. And so kind of where it started, honestly, I don't know if this is a good thing or it's a bad thing, but probably I would say 2008, between 2008, 2012, at the time we were serving at Stonegate, and I was leading a women's team. I was serving in youth. And throughout the year, we would have events where we would invite nonprofits, and always encouraging people to be in the community. But we would invite nonprofits to come in and serve or to tell us about who they were. And we would invite them to Bible studies or invite them to the foyer. And I always was frustrated that I felt like it was a great opportunity to bring people and bring awareness to it, but I felt like that pathway of connection was very hard.
So wait, just to clarify, you're doing events at the church.
At the church.
And you're inviting 501c3s, like,
yes,
and we won't name any yet. No. And you're bringing them to a place where your thinking is all these people from the church world are going to want to engage serving these 501c3s. So that was the intention of that.
Right. So the intention was we want to connect our members, the women, the youth, whoever it was that they were in front of, or just in the church foyer on a Sunday morning, saying, how can we get engaged in our community? It's not about the four walls. It's really about being salt and light outside the four walls. And so during that time, it was great. I loved seeing the connection. One of the ladies that actually came and listened, she was in a Bible study. She came and listened to a presentation from a nonprofit in the community. And about within 6 months, she was actually working full-time at the nonprofit. Yeah. So it was really great just to see those connections made early on. But for the majority, I just felt there was a simpler pathway, but at that time, I didn't know what it was. I just was like, I wish that we could capture more information, or that nonprofits had better pathways, honestly, because, and this goes to a little bit of who I am. And, like when I walk into a room or a presentation or a conference or any kind of place,
you immediately start organizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm processing what could be better?
Right.
How can we engage people better? What would this be better, time wise, or whatever it looks like? I mean,
Hmm.
that's kind of the way my brain thinks, and
Yeah.
you know that. And
Yeah.
so that was always something that I felt was a problem.
Where was the organizational problem you began to see immediately?
Among
From both sides, like
From both sides.
community, and we might have to clarify. I mean, you were inviting 501c3s to come into the church world,
Yes.
and at this time, and this may go a direction you don't want it to go, but sometimes even people in the church world don't see that it's not about proselytizing right off the
Absolutely.
bat. It's just go serve. It's
Yeah.
just go serve your community, go serve humanity. And so
Right.
going back to the question, where were the breakdowns? What were there perceptual issues? Were there just organizational issues when it
For
came to
sure.
engaging the community?
For sure. I think evangelicals as a whole, I don't know if that's the right word, but
Let's call them church people.
church people, I think sometimes we we put that piece at the front of the proselytizing piece,
Hmm.
or I think that
Okay, so we grew up in a church where, just to be clear,
Yeah.
we would take trips to amusement parks. You remember?
Six Flags.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it because you would make fun of me.
That's a
Because
family
I say
joke.
Six Flags, and apparently I say it wrong. And we would be told when we got off the bus, and audience may think this is not true, but this is 100%
Yeah,
true,
for sure.
that by the time you got back from your day at the amusement park, you were to have shared the gospel with 3 or 4 people, which I always did in the line of the roller coaster, because in case they died. And so what you're talking about is this whole idea of, maybe it's valuable to just be in relationship and to serve.
A lot of it for me was really just, it goes back to why the name.
Yeah.
We're just going to value people because we don't, we in the church world are critical. We assign value to people, but God really assigns value to people.
Don't you think we assign value to people based on how much they agree with us or don't agree with
Yes.
us?
Yes. Or, in different situations, I think it's culturally, it's not just in church, but it's culturally that we assign value to people based on skin colors, based on, what they believe, different kinds of things. And that is not biblical. I mean, the Bible teaches that we should value all people. That
They're
doesn't mean that you
created in God's
agree.
image, whether they agree with you or not.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. And it goes back to John 3:16, for God so loved the world.
Hmm.
I mean, and so who am I to dictate that value?
And it was really
God
the
has
religious
already
people
shown us
who
that.
asked, well, who's my neighbor? And
Right.
you get the story of the Good Samaritan.
Right.
Right.
Right. And the Good Samaritan, who are we passing up? Because
Mhm.
the Good Samaritan was guilty of, it was a racial issue. It was,
The religious issue,
the
all
religious
of these.
issue, who passed by the neighbor.
Yeah.
And so I think it was just, so kind of backtrack a little
Mhm.
bit. So in that environment, I don't feel like, I don't want to assign blame, but I think we have to recognize as believers that we need to grow and change and think through some of the challenges that we've had in our past, maybe in just assigning value and saying, you know what, I'm going to leave that up to the Lord. I'm called to be salt and light. I'm called to be a neighbor and to serve other people. And so what does that look like? And so kind of back to the issue of the seeing the challenges, I just felt like even from 2008, 2009, 10, that there had to be better ways out there for people to get connected to the good that was happening in our community. During that time also, we were in the heat of raising 3 kids. So, all of them were in junior high school during that period. We were in multiple booster clubs. I was involved in PTA. I was involved in nonprofit work, church work, across the board. And this is just incidental, but so our kids went to public school. That audience may not.
Yeah.
But in high school and
junior high.
And junior
Yeah.
high. And there was a program that was called Volunteers in Public Schools. And so it was basically a position on the PTA that I was in charge of for like 2 or 3 years. Didn't know what it was when I got involved. But then basically my job was counting how many volunteer hours that the school had. So
So you know how crazy this is? I don't even know that you did this.
yeah, that was my job on PTA. so so I would every month I would call, different booster clubs. I would contact people through email or, at that time, maybe texting and, saying, hey, how many hours did you serve at the volleyball courts this week? How many hours did you serve at the baseball fields? That kind of thing. Did you tutor this week? And so we would try to collect
Yeah.
from every school that there were multiple VIPs coordinators, and I was one of them at the high school. And so we would add up hours of how many people had served and
On an Excel spreadsheet.
pretty much,
Yeah.
or handwritten at that time. I mean, and so the funny thing is about that is honestly, I can hardly remember what happened yesterday. So when when you're talking about calling people, 2 or 3 weeks ago, hey, how many hours did you actually serve at the baseball field?
Right.
Well, nobody's really tracking that. I mean, it's kind of a guesstimate. And so during that probably 3-4 year span, I just thought, this is ridiculous. Like, there's got to be better ways. But at that point, it wasn't at the forefront of my mind. I mean, it was just kind of one of those frustrations. You're involved in
You took
something.
these mental notes
Yeah,
of
it was just mental notes at
2008,
that point.
2009, 2010. Your organizational mind
Yeah.
is already lodging this idea. There's got to be some better ways to do this.
And probably even all the way through 2015, 16, because those challenges, even that I became aware of early on, in the church or serving with different people, whether it was school or in the community, just the process to engage was very difficult.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult to track. And so I don't know, those were just mental notes along the way that I made that just were frustrations. And so probably fast forward 2018, when I think, for 19 years we had served at Stonegate Fellowship, and we really felt like that God had not said move.
Right. From Midland.
From Midland.
Yeah, we retired from the church and stay here in Midland. This is our community where we raised kids and had family. And
And I think there was a message at that time, and it had been that way during the whole time you were there, of invest where you are, continue to plant seeds where you are, invest in the people, and pray for your city. I mean, invest in it, because that's where you make a difference. And so
rather than an us versus them, and I think way back in the early parts of Stonegate, we talked about how, it's every bit ministry, to use that word, to serve on the PTA, to coach a volleyball team, to coach a baseball team, to go help at the, the food bank, to deliver Meals on Wheels, to work with senior citizens. I mean, it was actually more important that you go do that than it is that you probably show up on Sunday. And so we were already talking about that, and that's another part, right? That's in your mind.
And trying to show people, a lot of times people look at, well, I don't have time for serving. They don't, it's not in my schedule. And I'm like, you know what? It needs to become this place from the inside, that you're not just filling a slot for somebody. It's really about the relationship of what you're doing to help someone else that's in need. And so whether that's, I know there was several years in a row, we would take a group of girls, and we would go serve baking pies and things like that for Meals on Wheels. And we would, we never saw the end user, basically the client, but to know that those girls saw the process of what has to happen prior to all those people getting meals, it was huge. I mean, it's not just like DoorDash now. I mean, there's a process of, home cooked meals and those kinds of things. And so, and it's also just creating more awareness that a neighbor could be someone on your street. A neighbor could be someone at your workplace. It could be someone, at the baseball field. I know that a lot of times we say baseball a lot because our boys play
played a lot of baseball.
volleyball. Our kids were always involved in
Mm-hmm.
sports of some kind. So, but really just to see those as opportunities um, to build relationships with people. And then you never know 5 years later, 10 years later, the impact of some of those kids or parents coming back and, you know, asking for they're in need and
Or you're in need to ask them for
that's
something.
exactly right.
Go
That's exactly
press
right.
in some more to the just everybody's my neighbor. Press in some more to that. Because I know that's been difficult with some audiences.
Yeah.
So just talk about the whole title really meaning something, the why behind that, whatever term everybody's used to, the mission of that, the vision of that. Talk about every neighbor.
So, so really about the time in 2019, I started attending more and more once we had, we're still in the city, but not in the church as far as
Mm-hmm.
leadership. Um, I had really started attending a lot more community meetings, leadership. I'm trying to work with nonprofits, those kinds of things, learning more about their needs. And we went to so many, uh, meetings where it was just this volunteer, this connectedness piece came about. And so when you fast forward, it was not very long. It was 18, 19. And when you get into 20, and I'm getting to answer your question, but like when you get into 2020 and this just with being the mayor, that brought a whole new element of who is my neighbor. Because I think that was the struggle. It was such a divisive time. Divisive.
Whichever way you
Is it
tomato,
proper to say
tomato,
both?
whichever
Okay.
one you want to
Okay.
say.
So I think it was,
Are you saying divisive or divisive by 20 or by 2019 already just because of the political landscape?
I think the political landscape led up to that in 18, 19, and our culture as a whole, like nationally
Mhm.
or statewide. But I think in Midland, I always thought we're not going to be like that. And then I realized in 2020, as you ran for mayor, as you became mayor, and then in March of 2020,
When COVID breaks
when
out.
COVID breaks out, there just began to be such an element of, I mean, I don't want to lose faith in people, but it was, that like it was a very, very tough season. And a lot of people, we want to forget it, but I think we have to go back and learn from it and recognize how divisive it was and how because of fear and because of so much that was happening in our community locally as well as nationally and internationally, that this fear just brought this divisiveness to everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, can I even have a conversation with my neighbor? Well, what if they don't agree with me about any issue, whether it's politics, whether it's about vaccines, whether it's about how to raise your kids? I mean, it seemed like every issue was difficult.
Galvanizing almost.
Was galvanizing. We could not find a way to just engage people. We lost that because there was fear.
Yeah.
And so rather than seeing, there was a podcast that I listened to in 2020, and I should give credit to where credit's due, but they were talking about just how with the increase in social media through over, 10, 12-year period leading up to 2020, that, on Facebook and Instagram, you can find your group of people that agree with you. And so, you have Facebook groups with all kinds of different, I don't know what you call it, like just groups of people that think alike. And so what that does is it takes us more out of the public square, so to speak.
Becomes groupthink rather than community think.
Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So it's just this whole thing of, I don't know how to even have a conversation with my neighbor anymore, because how am I going to, it's not bringing about people on your side or their side. It's, hey, can we even just have a conversation?
And that goes back to the honoring them as humans.
Just humans.
Just a person with great value. Going back to every neighbor has value and every neighbor brings value. Is that kind of the right way you say that?
Yeah. Brings value to our community. So recognizing them and it goes back to people's stories. So it's every neighbor has a story. I think I think in the last, I don't know, probably 25 years, I think you realize how much that there are always two sides to every story. It doesn't matter if,
Whether you agree or not.
oh, whether you agree or not, but like I'm even thinking personally, many times when you're counseling or you're talking to different people, you're just hearing one side of the
Hmm.
story, or the news, you're just hearing one side. And so you always have to think from a perspective that there's always two sides.
Yep.
So there's two sides to every story. I may be only getting one side, and sometimes that's the perception that I have of other people. But in reality, that person may not ever share with me who they are and really things about them until you get to know them.
Right.
And so a lot of times I think because we don't take time to get to know people, we don't take time to value them and their stories and their experiences, then I just put up a wall immediately because I think I know who you are because I saw you on TV. And I mean, I could go on and on about, the newspaper or the, social media or whatever that looks like, even while you were mayor, no matter what the issue was, people think they know you
Right.
and they really don't. And they don't even know what's going on behind the scenes because a lot of times I remember you said, you just got to lay your head down at night and know that you did with the information that you knew that you did the right thing. Like you can't worry about what this person or that person said because they only have one side of it. Does that
Right.
make sense? And
Totally.
so anyway, so I think the whole every neighbor thing is not just taking people for, hey, what is my perception of them, but getting to know them and to know their experiences because you never know skill sets or experiences. It always leads them to honestly their greatest place of service. Like sometimes the most difficult things, I mean, people that Leslie, who works with me now at Every Neighbor, there's a lot of times that we have tears because if it's food insecurity or it's even an organization that shelters women
Hmm.
and in abusive
Battered and abused
situations.
women. Yeah.
Right. So, that's part of her story. Well, until you really get to know who that is and their background and to know Leslie, you would never know that that was part of her story.
Do you think that serving, we're going to jump around here.
Okay.
Do you think that serving, which at its core does not provide you anything for a living financially, do you think that serving creates the opportunity to get to know people because you just have to be who you are and and you don't put up the over time it can break down this wall of performance and then all of a sudden you begin to see the people around you and you never know the story you're going to hear. I mean,
Yeah.
and you have this unique gift. We joke about it all the time that Cindy has this sign on her that says tell me your story, whether it's in a line at the grocery store. I'm thinking of all the multiple places this has happened, whether it's the oddest places that all of a sudden I'm waiting outside because somebody has seen the sign on you that says, tell me your story. And that's got to be, so there's two things wrapped up in that question. Do you think serving sort of breaks down some caste system, so to speak, of work so you can get to know people and then just how this has grown in you to want to know the story? And I'll go back to our church days. We didn't want to know the story. I may be sharing the gospel, so to speak, with someone in the line of the roller coaster. I have no idea of their story, and nor did I want to know their story. I didn't even want to know them. I wasn't honoring them as a neighbor.
Yeah.
So pick and choose what you want to go with.
I think there's part of what we're called to as believers to just honor other people, serve other people in their need. And a lot of times we think we're providing something for them, but 9 times out of 10, when you talk about serving other people, it's what you get. There's something that comes back intrinsically within you that to know that you not only connected with other people that maybe you were serving alongside and you got to know their story, or just the impact of whether it's serving a meal, whether it's spending time with kids. I know when you were coaching baseball,
Mhm.
we had kids in our team that their dads were in prison. It was this variety of kids. I mean, some had a mom and dad, some had just single moms, some people dads were in prison. There was a vast majority of people that you got to know, and you're like, you know what? The difference was you were available and you were there and you loved on them and you made an impact on them. And so I know that, coming there's something about giving, but there's also something that you get back. And I don't even know if it can be described because it's really such internal, and it's that sense of fulfillment and purpose. I think sometimes that to know, I think Kathy Cook always says, that, um, one of the core values is just knowing that I made a difference.
Yeah.
How can I make a difference? And I think all of us want that. It doesn't matter if you're uh, what your faith is in. You want to make a difference
Right.
where you live, and so
Part of it is that serving is probably the purest form of the deep definition of love, where I give
and
and
expect
they can't
yeah,
give back to me.
yeah,
If
or expect nothing in return.
I get nothing in return,
Yeah,
and so there's something that's woven into us in this imageness, so to speak, that is we're meant to give, and the return is deeply soulish. It's I'm not
right.
trying to get the plaque that says I was the best volunteer of the year or whatever,
Yeah,
and that's kind of the hard thing, is because to go sacrificially serve with your time and effort always is a pain
hmm.
until you're done.
Oh yeah,
And then you go, okay, that
yeah.
kind of, I mean, let me skip around again because I want to get to the technology you're doing and different things.
How long is this?
I don't know. Well, no, but tell me the story. I don't want you to use her name, of a lady that you met here recently, really when you were launching the company, and she had moved here with her husband. And then the next thing you know, her and her daughter are serving. Tell
Yeah,
just how that came about.
yeah, it was really sweet. So this kind of goes back to even our time at Stonegate. We had a class that we did for several years when we knew that there was just an influx of people moving to Midland, and we knew that sometimes, a lot of times it's the husband that moves for the job, and then the woman, maybe she's trying to find a job, or maybe she's not going to work, or just looking for relationships, and so that
Because
just
he moves into community at the office. She's,
yes, he immediately gets into
yeah,
community. She may not. It may be through the kids getting in school, but sometimes when you move during the summer or weird times, it's just hard to get connected. So there's that piece of moving in general. I mean, transition's hard, and so we actually, just through some different relationships, I ended up meeting a young lady, and we just connected right off, and I began to hear her
because of the
story.
sign
And
that says, tell me your story,
no,
that you wear.
no, I love her. She's fun. I mean, I'm like, I'm very much the even one, like, so I do. I surround my people that are fun. I like it. So anyway, but we connected, and just, I began to hear her story. We just began a friendship. And anyway, so we've connected on a lot of things, and she's been here about, I don't know, almost a year now. And one of the things that she said, hey, I would just love to go serve. I've got time. She's kind of got a part-time gig going on, and she just said, I have some time. I would love to go serve with my daughter. And so we connected her with a nonprofit in the area that was having an event. And, it was such a sweet thing because she ended up signing up, serving, her and her daughter. And at the end of the day, she said, thanks so much. I feel like we did. Um, it was a run
It's
event,
a mud run,
a
wasn't it?
mud run
Yeah.
event. And so, her daughter actually participated in it. And then after she was done, they kind of helped serve the other people that were in it. And so it was just a really sweet time, not only for them to be able to doing something for this nonprofit, but also for uh, just totally blank. Um,
Well, the nonprofit even called you back and said,
yeah, and it just sent me a text, and I mean, I can tell the nonprofit it was Be the Change, and they do a great work in our schools in Midland, and they do a lot of mentoring and connection for students in Midland. But Be the Change, they had this Munred event, and she loved the time not only spent with her daughter, like
"Hmm,
doing something good, basically, but then also just the nonprofit saying, she stayed till the end. She helped us clean up. She didn't have to do all these things, but it was just such a great encouragement for someone that was new to the community and to just get invested. And I think, a lot of times it's a whole lot easier to sit back and complain about what's wrong than to engage. And so I think for new people, even here, Midland is a transient place, so to speak. A lot of people from a lot of different places. And I think I hate the complaint about there's nothing to do in Midland, because there is. And
to
that
be
that
clear,
goes to a whole other
that's a whole
thing.
other, because you're talking
That's
about there's people who say there's nothing fun for
nothing
me to
fun to do.
do, but you're like, wait a minute, there's a place to invest.
There's a place to
That's
invest
a
in our
that's a whole
community.
different ball game of
Yes.
what can you give rather than what are you demanding be
Given
given
back
to
to you.
you.
Yeah. It's
Exactly.
like, how can I invest? Where can I make a difference? How can I just have community with my friends that, a group of us are getting together and serving to make an impact somewhere? And so I think there's just an element of this giving back rather than expecting that it always is easy and everything should come to us, and, that I deserve this and I deserve that. Well, not really. I mean,
Doesn't that kind of go all the way back to John F. Kennedy, who said, that's not what the
yeah.
country can do for
Hmm.
you, but what you can do for your country?
Yeah.
It's the same mindset in a community like Midland
Right.
that feels like an island sometimes, surrounded by
Right.
dirt. And maybe the question of service in every neighbor also is stop asking what the city's going to do for you. Ask
Right.
what you can do for the city. And then maybe take that somewhere else,
Right.
because that's really the only way we're going to sort of get past this selfish lockdown mentality of it's all about me and give to me, and rather than a mindset that says, hey, it's our turn to make a
Right.
difference.
Right.
And talk a little bit. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Well, I was just going to say, I think overall as a community, we are such a generous community. I mean, if you look at statistically, and I'm not all about the statistics, like down to the number, but I just know statistically, this region is known for their giving.
The
The
philanthropic financial
piece,
giving.
the financial
Yes.
piece. And I think we can be guilty because of that thinking that writing a check is the only thing we can do. And and I think it's great. I mean, obviously, for people to give and to donate to things that they believe in is absolutely
Well,
a,
it's essential to
a
make these
pathway.
things happen.
It's
Yeah.
an essential piece. But it's also many, many, many nonprofits cannot sustain and grow because they don't have committed volunteers.
Okay. So move to that. Talk about
Yeah.
how there was another step I'm aware of, and I want you to get to, which is the technology that sort of caught up with where you're at, but nobody's using technology.
So basically, like in 2019, 20, as I was sitting in some of those meetings prior to lockdown, but like as I was sitting in some of those meetings, and people would just say, we have a consistent volunteer problem. Like we cannot, it's just so hard to get people connected and things like that. And back to how I'm wired, I'm like, okay, is anybody working on this? Like, and literally went around asking different organizations who are connectors in this community of some sort to nonprofits or to nonprofit work, and to say, is anybody working on the volunteer niche? Okay.
Is it niche or niche?
Okay. It could be either one.
I don't know.
What do you say?
Niche. I think niche sounds stupid.
Okay. So I think at that time, going back to the why a little bit of what really happened during that time period was, okay, I am not going to sit in one more meeting and talk about the problem.
Hmm.
We have got to do something to engage people. And I don't know what it is, but I have this history of all these mental notes I've made along the way and just thinking through what what can we do? And so, yes, the next step was research for me. It was
Which would be your happy place.
That's my happy place.
Yeah.
Um, but it was researching, it was calling, and honestly, during COVID, because that was a season where, you know, it was divisive and all those things, and people were reluctant, obviously, to gather, those kinds of things. And so I actually spent a lot of time researching, a lot of time on phone calls, a lot of time on Zoom, just talking to people in different communities and in different areas of our country and region, as well, to say, hey, what are you guys doing to connect people? And what are you doing to serve volunteers, in our community and helping them connect, or in your community? And so I just started making notes, like, what are people doing in other places? How does that work? And in a lot of places, um, in a very nonprofit world, it's called a volunteer center, or that's really what it's called, is a volunteer center. And basically, it's a nonprofit, usually funded by foundations, things like that. That their sole job is to help connect businesses to nonprofits, individuals to nonprofits. They work on that volunteer niche. And so I started asking around, and I'm like, why doesn't this region have anything like that? Have we ever tried that before? Who's done that before? And so just went down that road of, trying to figure all that out. And so had several conversations with people that do have volunteer centers in their area to see what they were doing. And a lot of times it was very physical and tangible. And that's important, because I believe the people in this region, your nonprofits, the relationships, those connections. And so it's a matter of, you can't take away, it's not just about technology. I mean, that's one of the things about Every Neighbor, is we really want to have a team of people that know you and that are in relationship with you. It's not just the technology piece, but the technology piece is an add-on. So I knew what I had in my head, as far as there's got to be some technology out there that I don't know about. So that was also part of that whole research thing of just calling different companies and saying, is there a company that does this already? And so uniquely, I got connected through a series of phone calls to a gentleman in Arlington, Texas, and he connected me to a company. It's called Volunteer Movement. It's VOMO for short. They've actually been acquired by a company called Virtuous right now, but in the last year or so, and they do volunteer management and donor management. And so
on a platform,
on a
cloud-based
technology
platform.
cloud-based platform. And so basically what that technology does, it's kind of twofold, and it's very unique, is that they have it's a volunteer management system for the nonprofit. So if you go back through the years, a lot of times we always like the way we've done things, and change is hard. So this is kind of bringing what I would say, volunteer management into
21st century.
Kind of 21st, yeah, that it's not analog. It's not pen and paper. It's not even Excel spreadsheets at this point. They're still valuable, but it's really allowing the nonprofit to have an organized database of who their volunteers are, what their analytics are, how often did they serve. It goes back to that tracking piece.
Right.
It's a way to track, and it's a way to for that nonprofit to know, who are my people that are really engaged, and not just pen and paper. So it eliminates some of the admin piece. You're not taking away a job from an admin, but you definitely, for that volunteer coordinator in those positions, it really helps just the analytic piece of knowing that database and knowing how, at the end result of that, like, what impact did we make?
Your organization is not just trying to sell a program so that a volunteer administrator can just have another piece of software. You're actually the coordinating consultant with the software, and you can
Absolutely.
help them run that whole thing.
Yeah.
Now,
So,
go ahead and do the so, and then I'm going to ask you how you've translated that into the business environment,
okay.
the
So,
for-profit
so
world.
let's talk about okay. So a little bit more about the nonprofit. So on the nonprofit piece, it's helping that organization get um really where they know the programs that they're doing down to the very needs. They're able to put that into the technology or into the platform. It then they know, say I need 10 volunteers on Friday and they need to show up between 10 and 12. Okay. So they know that the nonprofit knows that, but how does the community know that? Okay. So then we
They
depend
start
on
posting on their social media and
social
hope that
media,
works.
blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So, and, or contacting their other, maybe their current volunteers, hoping that they can get enough people to serve on Friday. So one of the things that we do is with this specific VOMO technology, VOMO Virtuous, I think is the proper name. But one of the things that happens is it becomes a front-facing dashboard, basically, to the community. So as each nonprofit puts in their information, it's going to a community-based platform that's housed by VOMO Virtuous, if that makes sense. So we are just that connecting piece that says every neighbor wants to connect nonprofits in this region, and we want to provide a front-facing platform. So anyone in the community can get on everyneighbor.com, go to a Serve Now button, and it will take you directly to the platform with nonprofits that we work with at this point.
Yeah.
And it will take you to that information that you can scroll the different opportunities and you say, hey, during the school year, we have Rope Youth, and they have an organization that work with underprivileged kids, basically, that they don't have fathers at home or grandparents are raising them, those kinds of things. And it's mentoring. So they say, well, I want to sign up. I'm interested in that. Yes, maybe there's a background check. All of that information is right there.
Right there on the front-facing platform.
Front-facing platform. They can get connected by filling out the background check, filling out any release forms, things like that. And they commit to a school and they find out the commitment and they're able to actually sign up for that opportunity.
Right there on that. Don't have to do no phone call, don't have exchange emails and all
every
this kind of stuff.
nonprofit's different. Sometimes they're doing interviews with people. Sometimes nonprofits don't need a background check. Sometimes,
but that's facilitated through the platform.
It's all
and
facilitated
who pays
through
for the platform?
So the nonprofit, there is a commitment to nonprofits. I said a volunteer center, if you go back and you're familiar with nonprofit work, a volunteer center is primarily funded by foundations and philanthropic money. We've chosen not to go that route. We really are a service to that nonprofit to increase the awareness of what they're doing in the community, to support them in volunteer connection, and to provide them technology to do that. And so we look at it as we want to provide a minimal cost of what we can do with that gives them, because we have to license the platform ourselves. So we're sub-licensing for them. So we provide the technology, but also we're providing, it's not a one and done, we're going to train you and we'll never talk to you again. It is a relationship of we're going to connect with you weekly, every other week, however much you want us to.
With the nonprofit. Because you're also getting feedback, if I understand correctly, from the volunteers to say, how'd the nonprofit do?
That's an avenue. Yeah. If that nonprofit wants us to do that, that's an added service that we can do. But there's lots of different feedback loops and things that we'd like to do for people. But right now, when you're trying to move from pen and paper and Excel spreadsheets, sometimes the technology piece is enough. Yeah. Knowing that someone's in my court talking about me in the community, sharing information with churches, with businesses. And so it's really that just volunteer center, cheerleader, the good that you're doing. And we're really promoting.
Recruiter.
Yeah, we're promoting the good. And I think that goes back to, honestly, the culture and where we are in Midland. I never thought that Midland could be negative. But like it is. And a lot of times we focus on so much of the negativity that I'm like, we have to be focusing as a community on what is good and where we can connect people and the good that's happening in our community. So how can we encourage that? And,
through service.
we can encourage it through service and one person at a time. And it's, I think sometimes people think they have this perception about people that volunteer that, they're 55 and over and that's our base. And that's kind of, well, with Midland 32, 33 median age right now.
Right. Getting younger.
This technology is not only on a desktop, it has an app that anybody can get on. Okay. So as a young person, not speaking of myself, but when I'm thinking about 30 and 40s,
they're going to do it on their phone. They're going to do it on their phone.
We live on our phone.
Absolutely.
And so the VOMO app allows you to go in to see those opportunities that we've called. There's invitation links, all that kind of stuff
you've said it already several times. How do they get to the website and the app?
So everyneighbor.com.
That's simple. Everyneighbor.com.
It tells us a little bit more about what we're talking about. Just Every Neighbor, how we believe that connection matters. We believe that people are valuable. Those are our core values. That's what we want to do. And we want to promote the good that's happening here. We want to connect people. So what we're doing is if they will go to everyneighbor.com, and then there's a Serve Now button. I think it's in the top right-hand corner. And you click on it. It takes you to our platform. And so it's connecting with the platform. You can then scroll the opportunities. And I would say right now it's late July. Okay. So a lot of the nonprofits that we work with right now.
Slow season right now.
It's a little bit of a slower season because so many of our nonprofits actually do a lot of work in the schools or seasonal. It's,
and there's a Midland rhythm. We've learned the Midland rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we've ever called it that.
Yeah.
But we know the Midland rhythm because it's going to, we're July, what's today? July 10th, 11th? I don't know.
10th.
And then come second week of August, the ramp up begins.
Right.
And then it runs through November.
Right.
Before Thanksgiving.
Right.
And then there's a lull.
Right.
If that's a word still. And then there's a little bit of an uptick in December. And then nothing happens until second week of January.
Right.
Then there's a run up to spring break. And then there's one final run to mid-May, and then it all falls off the cliff again.
So the interesting thing is because of that cyclical nature, a lot of the work that we're doing right now is getting things online for fall.
Getting ready for fall.
Yes. So we're getting ready for fall. So we're working with those nonprofits right now as they formulate, we can work with strategy or work towards strategy with those nonprofits. A lot of the times, we'll talk with boards. What are their goals? What are their needs? Like what we really want to take time to know that we're helping meet the needs of the volunteer needs within the nonprofit. That what are their goals?
So you really become a volunteer service coach as well and consultant with the technology to help move that forward and not just offload it on another volunteer who's trying to manage the volunteers. Turn the corner. Let's move towards wrapping this up. Turn the corner to the business side if you can for a little bit, the corporate side, as you've sought to engage corporations.
So I think it kind of goes back to the question about who's paying for it. Okay, so in our space right now, because we are technically a for-profit company, that I hate that word. Maybe I shouldn't even say that, but it's just.
Well, you're running it like a business.
I'm running it like a business.
And you're not running around asking for donations. It's a
we're
fee
providing
service.
A service. Yeah. That's exactly right. But I do think that one of the things is just like in the case with the churches, with members, with people that are of faith, and they know it's part of their DNA, how they need and want to give back. It's really simplifying that pathway for them.
For the company, simplifying a pathway.
For the church
or
for the company.
Yeah.
So a company, many of the majors here, they have, government affairs or community
Hmm.
relations people, and that's awesome. A lot of times those people don't even know what specifically are the opportunities. They may do corporate sponsorships, they may do things like that where they're engaging their employees as a whole, but they really want to provide opportunities for their employees to get engaged anytime. And because it is the community that we have, we believe for companies it's a huge retention piece
Mm,
because
no doubt.
because when people get connected to a relationship, it's so much harder to leave. I mean, because you value those relationships and you value the friendships, whether that's at work or in your community and where you're giving back. And so, um, that's kind of the focus of with the business, is that we want to say, your employees matter. And a lot of times we're guilty of, okay, here's your house, here's your moving company, all of those things, but where's their soul in this? And it goes
Yeah.
back to kind of the story of, my friend that we've just met in the last year or so, of just what does it look like to help take care of someone that's new, that's
To
moved
get
here,
into
to
community.
get into
Right.
community. And so it shouldn't just be for new people, but that is one thing that we focus on uh, with businesses. That's an aspect of what we can do
A new to
as
Midland
well.
piece.
New to the Permian.
New to
So
the
it's
Permian.
not just Midland, it's Odessa. It's, helping them engage with just locally what's up, what's happening. And um, do they have questions about soccer? Do they have questions about where to go to church? And it's not that we're giving these recommendations because we're getting paid for it.
Right.
It's really we're connecting them to other people in the community that are ambassadors that love this place. And so we're building bridges basically to other relationships for them so that it's a great experience, because Midland gets a bad rap and I'm kind of tired of it because it's a great place to be and we have a lot of great people, and so it's just helping them kind of find their place, whether that's in
Their
the
niche.
community or their niche,
Yes.
or serving. And so that's one of the pieces for businesses, but even for small businesses or medium-sized businesses, they don't have somebody.
They don't have government affairs
They
and
don't have
community
government affairs.
relations.
And what we're trying to help people know is, you may want to engage 10 employees, you may want to engage a department, and you may want to find a place for them to go, but you don't have time to research all the opportunities. And so that also is the beauty of the technology. And so I don't want to get super into the weeds, but it's a critical piece for the business. So one of the things that if a nonprofit has an opportunity that they they need 20 people on Friday. Well, getting 20 people might be a little hard just from in general in the community, like making sure the word's out. But if we can make a connection to a business that has a department with 18, 20 people in it, and they say, hey, we could serve on Friday, then the technology piece is that there's a link, basically a private link that the software does that we can invite that group, and basically we're arranging it behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
So we're arranging that behind the scenes where we're able to use the technology piece, but we're also able to use this business piece of, the relationships of, hey, we know what ABC corporation needs or small business needs. And we also know the need of the nonprofit.
Right.
And so we're bridging that for them to
Right.
say, hey, this might be a great place. One of the things that we're also doing for businesses, we realize that we want those employees to feel valued, because it goes back to the every neighbor has value. A lot of times people think, though, and this is probably a big piece for me, is that I, I've always struggled with, I'm probably more of a generalist, kind of mentality. I have experience in a lot of different arenas. Like I've worked for a couple family offices, kind of accounting.
Mm-hmm.
I have that piece. I have, you know, child and family studies piece.
Yep.
I have organizing of teams at,
Right.
There's just a lot of things. And I feel like that sometimes I don't give value to myself, that I'm not really good at any one thing. Snow skiing, I will
You are
say
good at
I'm
snow
good at
skiing.
snow skiing.
Yeah.
Okay. But I don't look at other things and go, oh, I'm really good at that. And so I think a lot of times as people, we don't take time to value maybe that our stories or experiences are valuable. And just because you're not an ace in it doesn't mean that you can't go serve somebody else.
Mm.
And so for the business, what we want to do is really engage those employees to say, kind of basically we call them make a difference interviews. And so it's just an interview with an employee to say, tell us your story. How'd you
Mhm.
get here?
So your organization wants to hear the story so you can
Yes,
better help them get plugged into service and community. And you'll offer that to businesses to say, just let us
yeah,
be a part of this for you. You don't have to worry about this. We'll
right.
interview the employees and
So we do the interview with the employee, and then we just talk through specifics of where they might want to get plugged in.
mhm.
We share with them areas of need that they may be able to fill, and really, according uh, to time. Also, I mean, time is valuable.
Yeah.
Time is everything, and so um, this is where I feel like it's a stair step. It's really engaging people, whether that's an employee, anybody in the community, that just start with once a month.
Yeah.
Like just go
Even once a
somewhere.
quarter will work.
Yeah, once a quarter will work.
Yeah.
Like if every single person said and created the awareness to say, how can I make a difference? And if it's baking cookies for my neighbor, if it's taking dinner to somebody that just had a baby,
If it's picking up
if
trash.
it's picking up trash, if
Right.
it's go do something.
And then eventually they may find their niche of
Yes.
service and
Yeah.
you can help companies find that. And I'll ask this question. You're also, if I'm watching correctly, because I watch more than anything, you're helping 501c3s really kind of raise their game because if they're going to be using the professionalism of every neighbor, you want to make sure if you're connecting them to volunteers and businesses that they're not wasting the time of
Right.
volunteers.
Right. I think sometimes and and I'm not dogging on anybody, it's just the nature of it.
Mm-hmm.
The needs are great.
Yeah.
And sometimes the volunteer piece gets pushed down the list
Mm.
because it's, you
Well, they're
know,
trying to run the business of the 501c3, and then next thing you know, they need volunteers, and then it
right. And
becomes a
then,
volunteer crash course.
yeah.
Yeah,
And so
exactly.
what we want to do, and we're young. I know initially you said, I've been doing this a couple years, not really. I've been thinking about
You've been
this a
thinking about it
lot of
for about
time,
20 years.
but actually we've just been in business probably about 10 months
Yeah,
total.
yeah. It feels
And
like 10
that's
years,
not
doesn't it?
even, no, not really, but like, I would say 10 years since we've even had, I mean, 10 months since we've even had a website. I mean,
Yeah.
like that, I mean, so that doesn't mean I was even calling on people. And that's kind of where I am too, is it's a very relational piece for me that I'm calling and connecting with people that I know or somebody has recommended
Hmm.
because I feel like that relationship is important.
And you guys are,
But
go ahead. Sorry.
it does up the game for nonprofits to actually think through a lot of what their processes are. A
Hmm.
lot of them have amazing processes. I mean, shout out to so many that have those processes and their needs in place, and they know exactly.
Hmm.
But I think it pushes them more a little bit for those that need a little bit more structure in those things to think out, 2, 3, 4 months. What does this look like? And how can we really do a good job of promoting this and actually getting this on the platform and making it a great experience for that volunteer.
Yeah.
And it's not just, that we're putting their name out there and, oh, we don't know what you can do. I mean, we want people to have great experiences because if people have great experiences, they're going to come back and
That's
show
right.
up
That's right.
because they're going to realize the difference that they can make. And so I think that's part of it is just allowing, just being I go back to be the bridge. Um, we have to provide that simpler pathway for people. And
It's a more complex world with so much more information that everybody's had to deal with, and your organization is saying, we can bridge this.
Yeah, we want to simplify that for the community. We want to simplify it for businesses, for churches, for anybody that wants to serve and get connected. So we really, right now, we're in growth phase. So we have nonprofits that are coming on board that we're having a lot of conversations with. I don't know if you know this or not, but if you go to, it's just ridiculous. If you go to GuideStar, which is, it kind of gives you just a broad scope of the nonprofits in the region who has a 501c3.
Oh,
It's
wow.
basically,
This number is going to be astronomical.
well, it's ridiculous. I'm going to safely say that there are over 1,300 nonprofits
Between
in,
Midland and Odessa?
yeah, maybe more
A
between
little broader.
Odessa, a little
Yeah.
broader, but
1,300.
1,300. So then you take out churches, you take out booster clubs, you take
Yeah.
out, which I'm not like,
You're still over 1,000.
yeah, because those
Easy.
are valuable organizations to be
Yeah.
a part of. So I'm not saying that it's not. But even if we had 100 nonprofits that were actively engaging, that were doing good in our community, it's too many for people to choose.
Man, this is an amazing thought.
Yeah. So
There's nothing to
then,
do in Midland, though,
I know.
or Odessa. No, we have 1,000 places you could
No.
possibly serve.
So I think part of
Yeah,
it,
in all honesty, how many of those are probably active?
I don't know.
Half? 700? 750?
Okay, I'll tell you this. So Midland College runs the Legacy program,
Yep.
where they do scholarships
Right.
for students, those kinds of
You
things.
got to
And
volunteer.
so you have to volunteer,
Right.
okay, during that process. And I know that there are anywhere from 80 to 90 nonprofits that are highlighted just information on their page. It's not the actual opportunity. It's just, this is the nonprofit.
Yeah.
And I think that there are people in our community that, Shared Spaces, Nonprofit Management Center, they do great work for our nonprofits in the community. None of them are focusing on the volunteer niche, but they do, West Texas Nonprofits has a list of hundreds of nonprofits that run everywhere from Alpine to,
Wow.
Marfa, Marathon, Midland, Odessa, Monahans, Big Spring, all
Yeah.
of that. It's a list. It's what I call it is it's a digital Yellow Pages. Is that a bad thing? No, I think it's
No,
a great
we're beyond
thing
the Yellow Pages.
because
That's why we.
it's a resource.
right.
But what we're trying to do as well for people who really want to connect and do the hard work, it is hard work. It is not easy. And I think anybody would tell us that. Most people look at me like I'm crazy. No joke. But the hard work is working with nonprofits to really get that information cold. And then it's easy putting it on the platform. It's not hard technology. It's amazing, super friendly, friendly technology to use. But it's hard work to work with multiple nonprofits that serve multiple different causes and arenas, because every single one of them is different. There's not one that does the same work.
But you have to be at least to a point where you're creating your own top 25 list, your own top 50 list.
Yeah.
I mean, you're not just come one, come all.
Well, this is the thing.
Because you want to connect people from businesses to nonprofits who are on their game. There's nothing wrong with that.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that and part of it is that relationship. It's not come one, come all, because I want to work with people who want to work with us. And because it's diving deep into the processes and systems that people currently have. And maybe it's perfect and nothing needs to be tweaked. 9 times out of 10, there's something that we can always make better and tweak. And so it's just having the willingness to work with people and to go through change. It's not only change for the nonprofit, but it's also change for the volunteer that says, wow, this is a new way of connecting to what the needs are in our community. So what our goal is to really.
I was going to ask you, you said your goal. So I was going to ask you one last question. What's your dream for this?
So I think my dream, my goal in this is to really build out a community platform. One of the great things about Vomo is it's very user specific to where, you know, on your phone, when you download the app, it's going to ask a few essentials, your name, your address, those kinds of things in order to, it's just like an Instagram or Facebook, you gotta accept the app basically. But it tags what's central to your location. So I don't know if it's all geotag or, whatever, but it's something where, if I live in Big Spring, then the opportunities in Big Spring or things closest to Big Spring would populate. And so that's the beauty of like what the Vomo technology does. It's everywhere where there's nonprofits in that region that are on the Vomo platform, it populates in your area. So what we're trying to do in this region is not only build out Midland, but Odessa, work with nonprofits in Monahans, Big Spring,
all over the Permian Basin.
all over the Permian Basin, to where there's a robust volunteer network that if anybody in the community gets online, they can see those opportunities. If there's churches that want to engage their people, they can. All of that platform is technically free to the public. It's really where the nonprofit piece comes into play of getting their technology on board. And then also as we work with businesses, I didn't mention this, but it's a huge part of it because we're not a nonprofit. We're not taking philanthropic dollars. Every neighbor isn't, okay? But what we're doing is we're trying to make connections for businesses or churches that believe in the nonprofits that they work with.
Mm-hmm.
And so they already have connections to them. Well, one way that they can help support nonprofits is they can say, hey, I want to sponsor half the cost of the platform for that nonprofit to get online. So it's a win-win because it's.
Can they sponsor all of the cost?
No.
Oh.
Because we really believe that nonprofits have to believe in what they're doing. They need an investment
in it as well.
They need an investment. So what we're doing is we're really engaging.
You're a pretty hard-nosed business person.
Well, I learned well. I'm a good teacher. But, I think part of it is just the aspect of really helping the business see a win-win for it, that they not only can sponsor nonprofits that they believe in to get on the platform and to make it available for our community because we don't have this. And then also just advertising and marketing dollars. That is something that we want to promote among businesses. Do you want to make this community better? Well, this is a central place that people
can go. More than
can
just a sign somewhere or
what drives me crazy
somewhere.
Yeah. And
is that kind of a whole pet peeve?
You play golf enough.
I play a lot of golf.
And we go to a lot of events.
Yep.
And I am not against donor-sponsored tables, donor-sponsored signs. Those all make things work.
Right.
But what's frustrating to me is that when we have the only volunteer center, centralized nonprofit, or
forward-facing digital
21st
century platform
in this region,
right?
That for less than the
what they're
cost
paying
of
for a
one
sign on a tee box
can provide a nonprofit a whole year of service onto the platform.
Yeah.
And so it's just I want people to be visionary. I want people in those roles of, that they're the head of a business, they're the head of government affairs, they're a head of, HR, and they see value in it. Or their marketing. This is a great place to say, hey, we want to support this, but we can only grow as fast as we can grow because you can only work with nonprofits.
Yeah.
It's time consuming on that side. And
there's an investment, but it has a greater return because nobody can tell me the return on a sign on a tee box.
No. And
this is the return, thing. The return on this investment is
value.
The ROI of people serving and being engaged
and being invested in. And so
I'm going to give you one more chance. to say the dream.
Did I not say it?
Well, you said a lot. I mean, but to me, it seems like the dream is our community growing through engagement, and you're facilitating that in so many ways. I mean,
Yeah. We're the bridge to community engagement.
that's cool. The bridge to community engagement.
Whether that's on your street, it's creating that awareness. One of the things that we're going to build into the platform is not only the nonprofits that we work with, but every neighbor will begin sponsoring some events where we'll invite the community to do things, whether that's engage somebody on your street, know your neighbor's name.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know your neighbor's name?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, we do know a few of our neighbors, but we don't, and it's like, it doesn't mean you have to know everybody on your street, but make an attempt.
Because every neighbor matters.
Every neighbor matters, every relationship, and engage people at work. So we're going to create more awareness on the platform of things that people that we call anytime opportunities. That it's just more bringing that awareness to the community of how we can promote doing good. And I think the thing for me, it's just that the connectedness piece as we move forward, because I just believe there's value there. And I believe there's value to Midland, Odessa, to this region to be better and to fight against some of the things that are realities in our region.
And just stop asking what your city can do for you and
what you can do for your city. And it's, I think I always, going to Africa or other places, in Asia or places I've been that I've served or had an opportunity to serve, I think sometimes you feel overwhelmed. Like, what in the world can I do? And I think I struggled with that for a long time. Like we would go when we went to the refugee camp and things like that, that you just think, oh my gosh, I'm one person. Like, what can I do? But I think that's kind of where I've come full circle just for me, is to be like, you know what, it is still one person at a time, and it's one connection at a time. And that's how you make a difference. And it's not, I've got to solve all the problems, but because I certainly can't do it. Like,
serve where you are.
You serve where you are, and you make it the place that God's planted you, and you make it what it's supposed to be, and you do your best. And so I think that's a lot of where I am, and I'm excited, and I think it could really grow. And someday, I know people have asked me, is every neighbor everywhere? And I'm like, no, it's just in this region, because that's
Not
what
yet.
I believe in. But if people in another community wanted to be in every neighbor, we can totally do it. Yeah.
Tell me how they get hold of you. Tell everybody how they get hold of you.
The easiest way is everyneighbor.com. We have a
and
form
there's a link on
there.
everyneighbor.com to get to you.
Yeah. So there's a form. It takes you to my email.
Okay.
So whether you're a business, a nonprofit, even an individual can fill out whichever form and just say that's the best way to get a hold of me. Or Cindy at everyneighbor.com.
Okay.
CINDY.
CINDY. Yeah.
At everyneighbor.com. But
I don't know how to finish an interview with somebody I'm going to go home with. I mean, usually I tell people, it's been great to spend some time with you. I hope we get to see each other again. So I'll see you tonight.
I know. So
Thanks,
all right.
Cindy.
Hey, thank you.
Uh-huh.